basically I want to say, look what I saw, right? If you capture a timeless photograph, then it doesn't matter when you are showing it to someone, it will always invoke some emotions. It's easy to replace an X-T2 or X Pro so-and-so, but it's hard to replace a small compact camera. Hi everyone, welcome to About Photography. My name is Martin and this is an interview with the amazing Samuel Streetlife.
Hi everyone, welcome to About Photography. My name is Samuel and this is an interview with... In this episode we are talking about street photography, gear, tips for taking photos, YouTube and much more. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode. If you like this content and want to see more, consider subscribing and sharing with your friends. It really helps to produce more videos like this one. And if you really want to get notified, use the bell icon. You can usually join us live here on YouTube, but there is also a podcast where you can listen to all episodes. And because all the good things come in pairs, there is another podcast called Best of About Photography where I post highlights daily. I would be very grateful if you would give me a rating and a review. Thank you very much. You can find all the information in the description. Now, without any further ado, let's talk about photography. My guest today is a photographer, YouTuber, and also recently a father, Samuel Lintaro Hopf. Thank you for joining me, Samuel, and congratulations.
Thank you, man, and thanks for inviting me.
How are you doing today?
Good. This is a rare opportunity for me to have some free time because, as you know, when you become a father, free time is very precious.
Yeah, you're right. The topic I would like to start with is photography. And I know you had been taking pictures during pandemic and of course before that. Now when things are getting slowly back to their normal, what is the state of street photography in Germany, and is it different than it was before?
Yeah, of course, the scenery changed, and the things I usually look for are not happening that often. People are not doing much on the streets. Now everything is kind of open here in Germany, so now is the best time actually since last year to do street photography in Germany, but I just moved out of the city. I don't live in the city anymore. I just became a father, so my summer is pretty much changing diapers. So I guess now it's a good time to do street photography. And for me, last year, as a lot of other photographers, I assume, I just documented what's going on around me, my neighborhood, also the city I live in Hamburg, or I lived in. So last year I was already taking different photos than I usually take. So this year is not that much different. Maybe I'm trying to shoot. I'm not really looking at what's going on in the city or in the world. I mean, of course I look what's going on in the world right now, but because I'm not really part of it now at the moment, I can't do much. I can't document it how I did it last year. Last year I was spending most of my weekends in the city, not during the hard lockdowns, of course, but there was so much going on, as everywhere in the country, in the world. So I was mainly photographing protests and, whatever happened in the city. And there was always something unique happening, something that I wanted to capture. But this year, I think everyone is very tired and got used to the new normal, and everyone wants to enjoy life like they used to enjoy it. So for me, even if I would be in the city right now, I think I would not think too much about capturing something unique that is unique for 2021, because there hasn't been much except maybe the Olympic Games, or we have the elections coming up in Germany, so that could be something interesting. But not for me at the moment, because I'm in nature right now, and I don't have any people around me. I live in a small village with 1,500 people, I think. So I can probably meet everyone within a week. So I don't know how my photography will change, but at the moment, I'm not doing really any street photography.
Yeah, I think I can hear our nature in the background.
Yeah, you can probably hear my 10 backyard chickens that I suddenly got from the previous owner of this house. So yeah, we have apples in the backyard. We have hazelnuts. There are some squirrels running around stealing the hazelnuts. A lot of insects. So maybe I should focus more on nature.
I was in the preparation. I was tempted to watch again the movie The Chicken People. Don't know if you saw it.
No, I have never saw it.
You should do it. It's a documentary about people raising chickens.
Ah, that sounds like something I need to watch right now.
Anyways, I know you came back from Japan, right? And if you can compare street photography in general in Germany and in Japan, and what do you prefer?
The easy answer is I would prefer Japan, because Japan is has such a strong camera culture. You see so many people carrying cameras around, and usually they are okay with you taking photos. In Germany, it's a little harder to photograph openly. You have to be a little bit smarter about it. Not sneaky, that is not the way to do it in Germany, at least. But it's a little harder, and I think for anyone who visited Germany, coming from the US maybe, or from Asian countries, they always told me that it's a lot harder, and you get asked more times about what you're doing. Personally, I got asked once in my lifetime here in Germany, because the way I take pictures is more, I don't want to say sneaky, but I use the GR, as you know. It's so small, you look like a tourist taking a photo on the iPhone or phone. And then I usually go to places that are a little bit more crowded. But I also enjoy taking pictures in my neighborhood. But I definitely prefer Japan, because you can be more relaxed. You meet other street photographers. In Germany, it's getting more and more popular. I have a feeling that in my hometown, or my ex-hometown, there are more street photographers now than they used to in like 2 or 3 years ago. But usually on a Saturday, you don't encounter other photographers, so you always feel a little bit like you're on your own terms, on your own mission. So I actually prefer meeting other photographers, not necessarily like shooting in groups. That never really works out, but I really love having like one good friend that I can meet and go to the same location, and then maybe split and come back to talk about locations and spots we saw. So that is easier in Japan, because when I go to, for example, Tokyo or Shibuya, you always see another street photographer, and you usually know each other. So you can always ask, how is it today? Like, oh, there's something going on in this area. You should check it out, and you get all these, local hints, informations. And here in Germany, you're always doing a solo mission. So
okay.
But I have to say, not to make this answer too long, but German people or European people in general, they tend to show their emotions more openly. If they're angry at you, they show it. If they love you, they show it. Usually they show that they're angry more than that they love you. But in Japan, no one is really speaking to you without asking or something. That you never speak to people in like convenience stores. You just go there, buy your stuff, and leave. But in Germany, you can always talk to a restaurant owner or street musicians. So in Japan, it's easier, but it's also lonely in in a different way, because in Germany or in Europe, you have people expressing their emotions. So it's hard for me. I wish people in Japan would be more open, like in Europe. Then it would even make more fun shooting there.
And I know you had been traveling a lot before pandemic, right? What is the best city or country for street photography, or your most favorite one?
Usually I say London. I really love London. There's a good street photography community. Just aesthetically, I like how the city looks like. The buildings, the architecture. People are often, you have like very fancy dressed people, right? Very British. And I think the British people, they really love their country. And I love going to countries where people are very proud of their country, you know what I mean? And in Germany, we have this German, what's it called in English? It's like guilt.
Okay.
You know? German guilt.
Not to be proud of the country too much.
Yeah, don't be proud of your country too much. And I think it's good to remember the history, but it's also good I think it's healthy to look at the good sides of a country and be proud of where you're coming from. And so I like, for example, the Oktoberfest in Germany, even though there are many tourists, but I like countries that celebrate their culture. And London is just a very easy city to take photos in. But honestly, I think there are better cities out there. I just need to discover them. And I really want to go to Russia or East Europe. Mm-hmm. Never been to Russia. I have to go to Russia. I always say I want to go to Russia. I never go to. So far, London. And I've been to New York, but New York is so, like, everyone takes photos in New York, right? So as a tourist, what can you do?
And Paris.
Or Paris. Paris is also very photogenic. And the people are very, very French. So, No, I would say definitely Paris and London. Yeah. And then Tokyo. And maybe some Russian city. Yeah.
And other Japanese towns, cities, like Kyoto, maybe?
Yeah. So my wife comes from Osaka, so I always go to Osaka or Tokyo. So I was born in Tokyo area or Kanagawa prefecture. So I always go to Osaka and Tokyo. And honestly, I think I prefer Osaka at the moment, because Tokyo is so busy. Everyone is going to work and no one has time to relax. In Osaka, it's a little different. Osaka is a food city. They have a lot of delicious food, street food. Fashion is, I think, also very big in Osaka. And you have a little bit of this steampunk or cyberpunk aesthetic at night. It's very cool city, and people are very open, very different from Tokyo people. So, maybe Osaka. I like Osaka more than Tokyo. Yo. I feel more like a local in Osaka than in Tokyo.
Okay. Is street photography the most difficult genre of photography?
Yeah, it's super easy. You just need a nice wall, and then you wait for someone to enter the frame. You capture the best moment. I think street photography is it's easy to get into, right? It's very easy to start street photography. Everyone who has a camera can do it. But I think getting good at it, or just being comfortable doing street photography, many people or beginners, they have a hard time feeling comfortable doing street photography. I think that takes some time and practice, but I would say it's a very accessible and easy genre of photography. But if I compare it to wedding photography, for example, I shot some weddings in the past, and I'm actually going to shoot a wedding this Saturday too, after a long time. But
Okay.
Weddings are super hard, as everyone who shoots weddings know. And I always said, oh, wedding photography is the hardest job ever, or wedding filmmaking. And street photography is kind of hard, but at least when you don't get the shot, no one will be mad at you, right? But when you shoot a wedding, you can't miss the shot. So the pressure is just much higher. And I think these two genres are very comparable. Like a wedding photographer, you have to be aware of everything that's going around you. You have to anticipate what is coming next. And so I don't know what is more difficult, street photography or wedding photography. I would say very good street photography is very hard, but wedding photography is pretty much up there.
Because of the pressure?
Because of the pressure and the pressure, and it's all about these moments you have to capture. It's you only have one shot of the bride and what do you say?
The groom.
The groom, yeah, bride and groom for the kiss, and they're exchanging the ring. Then you can't mess up. On the street, you can always wait. If you don't get the shot, you can say, "Oh, maybe if I wait a little longer, I can try again." But that's I think the thing that is interesting about street photography is that you always have these things that don't make sense at first, but you're trying to make sense of it, and then when it comes together, it's that seeing that, capturing that is a skill that I think wedding photographer could do street photography also, but it's a little different.
Is it like documentary photography, the wedding photography?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I see street photography as another form of documentary photography. I know that a lot of the street photographers actually don't like the term street photography as well. It's because it's such a weird word, right? It's street photography sounds like you're just doing photos on the street, but then there are people doing photos in restaurants or inside the subway, and then but it's still street photography, right? Or you can take photos of buildings, and that can be called street photography. So what was the question?
Yeah, we were talking about if the street photography is the most difficult genre.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think it is if you want to become good at it, or it's hard to develop your own voice within your street photography. It's much easier to start, fashion or portrait photography, and then develop a portfolio that it's easier to work on a style or aesthetic when you know what your subject is. But on the street, first you have to find the subjects, you have to get good at capturing it, you have to have good social skills if you want to be more intimate and close up to people. So there's a lot of skills attached that you have to also master next to just taking pictures. So in that sense, I think street photography is hard and complex, but that also depends on the people, on the person who's doing it. Because, some people are just social creatures and outgoing. An introvert might have more difficulties. I consider myself an introvert. So it is, for me, harder to be up and close all the time. But you can still learn it. So the answer is yes.
When you go out, do you have a plan in mind what you're going to do, or do you just go and outside and think something will happen?
I wish I could say that I always have a plan or project in mind when I go out, but it's hard to answer that, because up until now I always went out and see what happens, and I like that about street photography, that I don't need to have a plan. I can just let, the world open up for me, and I will see what I will get. And that search is what's so exciting. But I also know that I can't, or it's harder to grow a body of work that is, has a cohesive message or a vision. If you just go out on random days, taking random pictures. But on the other side, you can do that and later reflect and see, what am I drawn to, and then start a project out of what you have been already capturing. Because I find it hard to come up with project or ideas before I even approach it or start it, So what a lot of people do is, for example, take photos in their city without any specific project in mind. But if you do it long enough, you can at least do a project or book about your city.
Okay.
And so, yeah, that is something I try to do with my own hometown. But I travel too much. That is the problem, and I wish I could say I have like projects running, ongoing projects. What I did last year, I kind of considered a project because I was, documenting the changes in my city. It's not a unique project. A lot of photographers were doing that, but it's something that I was able to do, and I think for street photographers who might search for like a purpose, because a project, like, why do you need to do a project? Right? You can do a project because you want to look good on your website, having a nice body of work. But I think from my point of view, when I see street photography also as kind of documentation of, the times of where you're living in. So whenever I take pictures, even though I don't have a project in mind on that day, maybe, if I see something that could potentially be interesting in the future, then I take it, even though it might not be an interesting photograph. So for me, street photography is very much like observing, capturing, documenting, and then later see if I can make something out of it. And I think one day there will be something coming out of it. But at this moment, because I'm not doing street photography at the moment, I'm thinking about project ideas. And that's one regret I have, starting street photography and not having some side projects,
Okay, and in terms of, for example, location, or do you have something like when you go out and you just, can't get into the zone, you are just kind of like, I don't really know if I'm gonna take any pictures, I'm not in the mood. Do you have like locations that you can go and you like the scene there? Or do you, because some people even research the location on the Google Street View or something like that, so they know what they can expect. So I was wondering if you do something like that.
Yeah, I definitely do that if I'm in a city I've never been to. For sure, I need to know roughly where I have to go. I also don't know. Usually when I go to a new city, I just go to the busiest place first, just to have a feel of how busy the city can get. So I know the rhythm of the city. And then I look for other places that might be more personal and have more character, because every city has their main tourist place, right, where tourists go. Usually it's like a town hall or something. And here in Hamburg, my ex-hometown, it was the town hall, which was the main spot. But it's not really a place where the locals go, and the pictures you capture there aren't that unique to the city. It's if you come to Hamburg, you have to go to the fish market or harbor, and not necessarily in the city center. So, but if you're going to a new city and you don't know that, then I think most people look for the most touristy places because this is where the streets are the busiest. But I tend to look for just areas that have more character. But I also go to the touristy places first, so I get it out of my way, take my tourist photos, and then maybe if you meet some locals, you can always ask them. But I think researching up beforehand is important, especially when you spend a whole day walking. At the end of the day, my feet always hurt a lot. I also have flat feet, so I have insoles for my feet, and I also still suffering from a ankle injury I had during my skateboarding years. So I can't walk for a long time, and if I explore a city by walking, I don't want to spend a full day walking in places where there's nothing going on, but there's always something going on. And at the same time, it's also good to let it flow and explore the city. That is a lot of fun. But for me, because my feet they are not so healthy anymore, I try to research beforehand where to go, and then have some leeway to explore other areas. So that is my strategy.
Do you check for photogenic places, or maybe like famous pictures that had been taken, in the history or on the Instagram, or to save some time?
Yeah, sometimes. Usually, if I don't know any famous photo from that area, I think that might be even better, because then I don't have any, preconceived notions about the place. And I think I don't want to visit a new city and then already have, a view of the city in my head.
List.
Yeah, shot list. No shot list. I might write down like a shot list of specific characteristics of the city that I want to explore. Not like, silhouettes at this train station, on this time, but more like winter vibes in Canada or something like that. Or, something that is exciting to explore, but not like a motif,
Okay. And when you come back from your photo walk or from your project, what is your process? Do you edit pictures right away, or do you let them, marinate, wait for...
I show you what I do, okay? So when I come home with my camera, I have my camera usually in here, my GR3. I come home, I do this, I do that, and then I do something else. No, I don't, like, if I had an amazing productive day and I know I have like the best shot of my life, then of course I check it out and, do a backup, but that doesn't really happen. You can see my highlights in the background. Okay. 2 photos that I'm proud of. The rest. So usually I just come home, put my camera away, and that's it. I might come back to my photos when the card is full. Is usually when I look at my photos.
Okay.
But it takes a while until my SD cards are full. So yeah.
And do you have any rules when you actually edit your photography? Do you have any rules about how much editing is too much editing? Do you have any straightening the pictures or changing color scheme and such?
So I shoot mainly black and white at the moment, and last year I shot exclusively black and white. But when I shoot color, for example, I'm really picky about the colors, how they look, and I used to, slap on presets, Kodak Portra preset, but when I look at these photos now, I find them too overly edited. They don't look realistic to me. And what I like is it's just good colors, but not. I don't want someone looking at my photos and say, "Oh, nicely edited." This is not what you want. But of course, I want to optimize my photographs, and what I usually do is, straighten the horizon, maybe check out how my tone curve, if I can increase some contrast, and I like to have, some very deep blacks and some almost crushed whites in the frame. And with my black and white, I tend to have a lot of tones in my photos. Or this is what I want. So yeah, black and white takes a little bit more time because you're converting a color photo and then you can play with color channels. But usually I choose my cameras based on the output of the sensor. So if someone likes, Fuji, then they probably don't edit their photos much.
Okay.
And this is the case for me with my GR3. I guess I can talk about it. I used to own a Leica M262. I sold that camera, unfortunately or fortunately, but that had amazing colors. So I kind of regret it. But when I'm happy with the camera, then I don't edit the photos much. Let's say I take maybe 5 minutes or 10 minutes on a photo.
Okay.
Until it's like ready for print. Or finalized, and then always save the DNG and the JPEG. JPEG and RAW seems to be fine. With black and white, because I use, to be honest, I'm also a little bit lazy when it comes to editing, and lately I'm just using the JPEGs of my cameras and just add in more contrast or change the tone curve. But when I really want to spend time on a photo, then I use silver effects for my black and white photos. And then I might take like 20 minutes, 15 to 20 minutes per photo. But because it takes so much time, I only do it when it's part of a project or series of images. So yeah, 5 or 10 minutes max.
Okay. And looking at some of your older pictures, do you think photographs are developing character over time? Like, for example, pictures with cars, right? As the pictures get more dated, when we, for example, look at pictures taken a long time ago and we see those beautiful old cars, right? And then the photographer who was taking the picture was probably like, well, the cars are getting in my way, like I am now when I take a picture. And I also look at smartphones in such a way. So what is your take on dated photographs, and what do you think about people who are chasing so-called timeless photographs?
Yeah, I haven't been doing street photography for that long that I can say that if I look back to my first street photographs that I can see big changes. People used to use smartphones when I started street photography. So, I'm doing photography much longer than that. But yeah, when I look at old photos from like 10 or 20 years ago, I definitely see differences and, fashion changes. Our gadgets changes, how the city, the architecture. I think it's more obvious seeing the pre-COVID times and then the post-COVID times. This is where you see, a big change on the street. But I was always for taking pictures of people using their smartphone. It's just part of how our society is, right? And do I wish I could travel back and shoot next to, Bresson and in Paris or whoever and take pictures of people being, normal social people, not online? Yeah, of course. That would be, I dream about that, but it's just not realistic. And that goes back to, the notion of street photography being part of a documenting process. I capture whatever I see. When if people are on their phones, they're on their phones. I don't wait for them to look up somewhere else, because that's how the streets look like. The same with all the masks. We do miss, facial expressions in photos, and I feel the same. I really don't like seeing masks on photos, but that's how it is nowadays, and I think we should capture that.
I was asking that because the photographs you mentioned, those two right behind you, right? They pretty much look timeless, right?
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, the one with the boy or the child, and then the people going to swim in the lake or river or wherever.
Oh yeah, this is a very kitsch, romantic photograph, which could be taken anytime, I guess. If you capture a timeless photograph, then it doesn't matter when you are showing it to someone, it will always invoke some emotions. And I think the photo I just showed you, I guess you can say it's a timeless moment, because it's hard to date that picture. But I actually try to look for photos that include the times we are living in, have some kind of element that dates the picture, because as I said, I'm not really out there to take a visually interesting photo. Of course, I want to take good-looking photographs, but I'm more interested in seeing something that describes. Photography for me is just documenting what's around me, and to be honest, I think we all just take pictures because we, first of all, want to remember our life and what happened, and photography definitely does that. And I think we might also take pictures, maybe because that once you leave this place, you will leave behind, what you saw,
legacy,
what Martin saw, what what Samuel saw, what whoever saw. And I think, for me, if I'm completely honest here, of course I want to leave something behind, and I don't want to be forgotten. This is like something that humans, I think, deep inside have this, feeling of feeling not important, but leaving something behind. You don't want to be just someone who lived and consumed and spent money, and that's it. So yeah, a timeless photo speaks for your artistry, maybe for your aesthetic, but I think capturing these photos that can be dated also add to your legacy, if you want to say it like that. Because I want to show my photos, and basically I want to say, look what I saw, right? Look what I saw. And I don't want to explain the photograph. I want people to look at the photo and maybe associate some emotion or state of their or some chapter, a chapter of their life they can relate to. Taking photos of, for example, a newborn. If you have children for the first time, like, of course, I'm going to take pictures of my son now, and these pictures are mostly for myself. But later, someone can look at them and, reflect on how it is to be a small child. So I don't know, it was a long answer, but I like photos that can be dated, but I also like photos that are timeless. Yeah.
One of your recent projects was a year of taking pictures only in black and white, right? What are your takeaways? Do you think, was it a good idea?
Wait for my upcoming video about it.
Little sneak peek.
Yeah, so that was a New Year's resolution in 2019. At the end of the year, I wanted to have some kind of challenge for myself. Some people do these 365 photos a year. So every day you take a picture. And I've done it a long time ago, but I failed after 264 days or so. So I thought it would be fun to have some kind of limitations for the next year. Little did I know that 2020 is going to change our lives. But the idea was to, because I was also always taking pictures in color and black and white, I also felt the need to find, one visual voice, not have too many voices. And for me, color and black and white, they can work together sometimes, but more often they look too different to be in the same project. And I always admire photographers who just shoot one specific film, or only black and white, or only color, or only high contrast. And yeah, I guess you could say I had a little identity crisis about my photography. And when I look back, all my personal favorite photographs, they were all black and white. Even though I have some photographs I personally also like in color. So my idea was just shooting black and white for 2020. And maybe I can learn something new. And if not to tell other people about it, then maybe at least for myself. And to be honest, now it's 2021, it's July. I'm still not sure what to think about it.
Okay.
I started filming a video explaining it. I also made a book, which I'm now trying to change a little bit because I'm not so happy with it yet. But the project title was basically A Year Without Color, because the pandemics came. So black and white was perfect for the mood of 2020.
Did you regret that? Like you saw something and you thought like, well, and then how hard were you on yourself? Because I guess that you don't have like monochrome, that you still end up with DNG files in color, right? So
yeah,
were you tempted to, just use it like this looks so good in color, I should rather use it?
Of course, in the beginning that happened a lot, but I created a preset in Lightroom, and during the import sessions, I would always make sure that the black and white preset is already applied before I even see the color. So I don't regret it. I think it was important for me to stick to one specific thing because with all these, social media and showing our works all the time, people don't really commit to something. And I have the same problem because I'm also on YouTube. I review some lenses from time to time, or a new camera comes out, or so on YouTube I always have different gear. So and I was also shooting color for some videos I had to do last year, but for my personal work I would only shoot black and white. And yeah, I wish I could give you an answer on how I changed, but I think it's still a progress. And I think 1 year is not enough. 1 year sounds like a long time, but there are people out there, like Jesse Marlowe, I think, spent 10 years for one of his books. And 10 years is such a long time.
Yeah.
So 1 year is nothing again compared to that. So I think I have to keep shooting black and white. I also feel like I became better at it because I shot black and white a year. So yeah, watch out for my video, which will come out one day, but I don't know when.
Okay. Why does image work in black and white for you? Do you have any rules? Or what have you found during this project?
Yeah, I mean, I wrote down all these basic things that differentiate black and white to color. And, you know, black and white, you look at shapes, light, contrast. With color, you look more for color combinations, the mood of color. And I think you can use color to enhance a specific mood, which is harder to do in black and white. In black and white, you work more with subject matter and light. So what I look for in a black and white photograph is it sounds so cheesy, but black and white helps, you know, capturing the soul of something. You know, I really hate saying that. It doesn't do it all the time, but I think a good black and white photograph lets you forget about color or black and white. You just look at the photo and you see a subject is seen and it just speaks to you. On the technical side, I think a successful black and white photo is rich in tones, like not only black and white, like, you know, just black and white, but also have all the gray tones in between. What I found with black and white, what I learned last year is usually when I shoot color, I sometimes add a little vignette to emphasize the subject more, if it's in the center. But with black and white, I do the opposite now. I do like an inverted vignette, so I make the edges brighter.
Okay.
If, for example, you have trees in the background or a cityscape and a lot of like power lines in Tokyo, for example, adding a vignette adds more contrast to these noisy elements. But if you, I do this in camera on my GR, for example, when I shoot black and white, like 1 or 2 stops, I add more exposure just to the outside of the frame. And if you don't overdo it, it can make the subject stand out just a little bit more. And there are some tricks you can also do, but I don't do this really. Maybe I did it in some landscape photos, is you can add more contrast in your foreground subjects or in your subjects in general, and then reduce the contrast where you don't want people to look too much to.
Kind of like dodging and burning?
Yeah, but just with contrast.
Okay.
And you can, this is the kind of thing you can do with black and white. You can also do this with color, of course. So when you shoot black and white, then everyone knows, you know, if you have, you know, fog, like a misty day, then black and white always looks beautiful because everything melts into the background and subjects that are in front of you, they stand out so much, right? And yeah, you can do that with enhancing, you know, the image a little bit, lowering contrast or brightening parts up. So that is what I sometimes do, but most of the time I don't really need it. So yeah, basically it has to speak to me. It has to evoke some emotions. I have to get it. I think with color photographs, it's easy to, you know, have a woman in a red dress and, you know, oh, the photographer was looking at that color. But with black and white, you need to be a little bit more precise to to where the viewer where to direct the viewer's attention. So, yeah.
Okay, that really makes me want to shoot black and white.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah, that's my problem. That I always talk to photographer, and then I'm like, yeah, I have to do that.
Yeah, I mean, yesterday I was listening to Andre Wagner. You probably know him. He's a Leica shooter. He only shoots film, and Leica does these Leica conversations, talks, or these videos. And whenever I see his photos, I'm a big fan of his photos. Very, traditional style, black and white film, Tri-X. And yesterday I was listening to him talking about black and white and why black and white, and I was like, yeah, you're so right. I will always shoot black and white, and but then you listen to another color photographer.
Then I see like Steve McCurry.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this makes much more sense to shoot in color.
Yeah. So yeah, but I talked to a friend of mine from New Zealand. He's a photographer who shoots a lot of black and white, and he will be part of my video when I talk about it. And for example, he doesn't even consider color as part of his artistic process. He does take color photos, but it's more to remember something, some object or something. But he always has his cameras to black and white, and I'm getting there, but I'm very distracted by color sometimes. Yeah.
Do you have favorite style of street photography? Like, I don't know, if you like, for example, Daido Moriyama, or you more towards like Henri Cartier-Bresson?
So I have to say Andre Wagner again, because his style is, you could say it's very good, very Gary Winogrand-like. I'm also a 28mm shooter, so I personally really like the aesthetics of it. So yeah, definitely his work. At the beginning, I was a huge Matt Stewart fan. I think my first street photograph was his pigeon photograph that I saw, and then I realized, oh, this is street photography, and then I explored it more and more. I'm not a huge fan of Daido Moriyama. It's not a style that I personally really love. I can appreciate it. I like his early film work, not so much his digital work. But you're asking about street photographers, right? It's pretty much the same. I'm also a fan of Aaron Berger or Bird. Yeah, I think Aaron Berger is his name. He's also a New York photographer, but he also shoots 28, very similar to Andre Wagner. But that is the style that I feel comfortable working in. But I actually want to look more outside of it and trying different focal lengths at the moment. And because I live in the countryside right now, 28.
Do you think someone who is maybe thinking about starting with street photography should start with 28?
I mean, I could talk about 28 all day. Because what I actually like, what I really like about 28 is that, everyone says when you shoot wide angle, you need to be close. And then you have this this quote, I think it was Robert Capa, I don't remember, if you're not close enough, you're not, if your photograph is not
good enough, you're not close enough.
You're not close enough. And it makes sense if you're always like subject driven. But I found out last year during the pandemic, shooting, mostly 28, or in general, when I look back at my old photos or other people's old photos, the subject becomes more and more uninteresting, because let's say you photograph, let's just take a Black Lives Matter protest, because last year we had a lot of them. And let's say there's one photograph of a guy screaming and, a very cool pose. In like 10 or 20 years, we will see that, but we already know the story. So, okay, yeah, this is the people protesting. But I think you will look more outside of the frame, and this is what happens when you look at like Gordon Parks' photographs, like right now. Then, yes, you see, the message, the subject, but it's so interesting to see, the signs in the background. What are people holding in their hands? And so what I like about 28 is that you have more in the frame, which makes it difficult for the photographer to have organized framing. But at the same time, I think it's okay to have more in the frame because it will only add to the can you say rewatch value of a photograph? Because later it will be more interesting coming back to these photos and seeing all these details in the background. So last year was social distancing and so on. You couldn't go up close anyways, or people really didn't want you to do that. So I was still shooting 28, but people were smaller in my frame. But that is also an interesting perspective. And so yeah, I just think 28 is more versatile than people think. It's not just for getting close.
Okay. How someone decides what focal length works for him or her? Or maybe zoom lens might be a good starting point. What do you think about that?
I think a prime lens in the beginning is always helpful because when you use a zoom in the beginning, you just have more options, right? You don't really warm up to one focal length. If you have a 24-70, for example, you have so many different focal lengths you can explore. It's much harder to find to really see the benefits of a focal length like a 50 or 35. So I think for beginners, I would recommend shooting on a prime. My first DSLR, my first lens for my first DSLR was a 50, and that was on APS-C, so it's more like a 80 millimeter maybe. But that lens made me, compose in 80 millimeter field of view, and then you can explore other focal lengths, by a 35 or by a 28. But at the beginning, I think you should find a focal length that can do most of what you want to do, and then just stick to it. Like even right now, I don't know how long I'm doing photography, but probably since I'm 13. I'm now 33, so 20 years. So it took me 20 years to find the focal length that I really, really can always come back to and enjoy. And now I want to explore zoom lenses again because I think I get it now. I get
you
what 28 is.
Enough.
Yeah, I'm mature enough to switch to a kit lens or zoom. So yeah, I want to explore zoom lenses now because I know how different focal lengths feel and the benefits of it. But for a beginner, a 35 is probably the best choice when it comes to street photography. You can't go wrong with a 35.
Okay.
Or a GR, of course.
How do you keep educating yourself and improving your photography?
When it comes to actively, teaching myself something new or improving my photography, I just try to keep shooting more, which sounds so basic, but I think with things like running a YouTube channel, I'm not taking as many pictures as I would like to. Most of my times I spend on the computer editing. So just going out more and taking pictures does improve my photography. Every time for example, last year, you probably remember, I did this GR project with
Yes.
Ricoh. And I was taking photos like a full week in a different city, just with one camera. And just doing this project, I became so much better at using, first of all, the camera, because I was not using anything else in between, and just repeating the same things and then adjusting, trying new things. So for me, I learn the most when I just keep doing something. And I will say, though, that I wish I went to more photo workshops. I never had the experience of getting like feedback from someone who's, doing it much longer than me. And even in university, I had a photo teacher. He never really gave me good criticism. He was always like, "Oh, nice job, good." And then he's giving, more feedback to the other students who, maybe are more beginners. And so I regret, not having spent any money to attend workshops. I actually was about to attend Up Photographer's workshop in Rome last year, and I already booked the flight. I booked the workshop, and then they canceled it because of COVID. I'm self-taught, and I get my inspirations from everything. But mostly, I get better when I shoot more.
There's this idea, especially in street photography, that the picture should tell a story, like you mentioned. And you said wrote for Ricoh EU, and I quote from the website, "Then the pictures swim in the endless stream of cool pictures that tell nothing about their makers, except that they want to be cool. So where is your story is always a question for images that photographers present to me. And one question that is particularly important to me is, what does this story have to do with you?"
Yes, yeah. So, of course, it depends on who is looking at the photograph and if it's even important to have a message or a story. But mainly, you say to people, your photograph should have a story, because otherwise other people won't get it. And why even take a photo if it's not clear to the viewer what you wanted to say?
Okay.
And so also last year, a lot of photographers' work changed a lot, and I found them to be much more personal, their work. I think, I don't know, but I feel like my work also did become a little bit more personal. And I think this is what is interesting to look at, because everyone can take we shouldn't use great so loosely, but everyone can take a decent photograph, a nicely composed photograph. Everyone can capture the right moment, just take photos 12 frames per second or something, and you will find the good moment. So there's skill in that, but a strong photograph for me has also some personality in it, and ideally someone else should experience that through the photograph. So I'm not against photographs. I don't say that photographs have to have a story, but they have to have something personal in it from the photographer. If it's mainly a photograph that was shot for documentary purposes, then it should be clear what the purpose of the photograph is. But even if you shoot a wedding, you might do compositions that you saw other photographers do, but still there's always a little bit of your vision in it. So that's what I like seeing. If I see a photograph and I get nothing from it, then I feel like the photographer didn't really put themselves in it.
So you're talking about style of photographer. How does someone develop style?
I don't have a step-by-step instruction. I can only tell you what I experienced witnessing other photographers who developed their own style. I think my friend Ulysses, shout out, you had him on your podcast. When we met, for example, his photos were very much, street photography, Gary Winogrand style, and now his work has so much changed in a good way. I really think his aesthetic is becoming very like him, and I think this is so good to see. And I think the key point is probably to just stick with your gut, and who can say that, like, who is going to determine what your style is? I think other people will say that to you. Like, I cannot really describe my style. I can describe what I'm looking for, but other people will interpret my photographs differently. And so if you're looking for your own style, maybe it's good to ask other people, do you see something? Like, how do you feel about my photographs? And because it's hard to see your own style. You might not realize that you are mimicking another photographer's style, which is very common and not a bad thing to do. And you can add your own flavor to it. But it's important to have a style if you want to be recognized as for a specific vision look. If you want to become an amazing photographer who is known for one style, or you want to become a commercial photographer who ultimately you want to stand out, right? And if you want to sell your photographs, otherwise there's no point of you doing it. Maybe we have AI technology in the future who can shoot in anyone's style, and then we have to find a new way. So yeah, in my experience, you develop a style by just continue putting out the work, trying new things, because then you find out what is not your style. Like shooting black and white or color, this can be part of your style. And then maybe you experiment with low contrast, high contrast, or you shoot more aggressively or more clean. At the end of the day, once you reach a point where you're comfortable taking pictures and you don't think too much about it, I think that's the time when other people also recognize a style. But if you're constantly like reinventing yourself, then it's hard to say if you have. Everyone has a style, even if it's not apparent. But what you put out there might be just a phase of something you're experimenting. So it's not easy, but just listen to your gut, and whatever feels right, whatever is most comfortable to you. Like, let's take some photographers, for example, here Tatsuo Suzuki in Japan. Most people know him as this, very in-your-face, black and white, high contrast photographer, but he didn't start off that way. I think he actually took photos of models and clean photos, and then he wanted to have more emotion, and then his style developed, and now he can't shoot anything else because he found his style. So whatever makes you feel most comfortable shooting, that is your style. Accept it.
Okay. And how do you stand out in this, as you said, like a flood of cool pictures, for example, in this social media game, right? And you also recently talked about the Instagram and how it influences photographers, but how also they treat your images and how you want them to be treated with, right? Mm. So what would be your advice for people who would like to stand out on social media?
It's a trap, people. It's a trap. No, it really is, because it's how do you say, it's a double-edged sword. So on the one side, you absolutely need to be on social media to be seen nowadays. It's just how it is, unfortunately, because not all social media platforms, showcase your work in the best way. But to get discovered by other people, there's really nothing you can do. You can avoid social media, of course, and work on your projects. And maybe after 20 years, you publish a book, and then maybe the project will be interesting enough that people starting to recognize you. But it's very. I have also a lot of problems with Instagram, but mostly in recent times, because I realized for myself that my photographs, not too much, but they were definitely affected by just the fact that I have to present my work this small, and photos that have a strong subject, good contrast, they work great on Instagram, but for example, I think yesterday or 2 days ago, Sean Tucker, he posted a photo on his Instagram. I really liked this photo. It was a black and white vertical orientation photograph of a city scene or town scene and a little boy jumping. And normally people would shoot a close-up of the action, but he shot the whole scene. And because it's also shot in like portrait orientation, it's even smaller. But I know that this photo printed like this big, or even looking at on a big screen, will look so good, but it just doesn't work well on Instagram, and that's just a shame. So I think the danger of Instagram is that you take photos that work on Instagram based on how people look at your photos, which is something you have to do if you're after the likes, the followers. And after the video I did, I got some comments of people saying, what can I do? There's no other way. I just have to play the game. Otherwise, no one will see my photos. And that's kind of true, but and we can still do that. I don't think you just have to be mindful about it. You can't just start your Instagram account and don't reflect on what you're doing on the social media platform, because it is designed to change you in the first place. So we all know that social media is designed to manipulate, your behavior. So that's already, clear. But I think we forget how it changes how we do our creative work as well. For some people, it is a blessing. Some people, they got really famous and were able to sell photo books and do galleries, exhibitions, because they become famous through Instagram. And I think it has good sides and bad sides. But for my own photography, because I can afford it not to post regularly, I actually don't care too much about posting on Instagram anymore. I'm still not sure if I should delete all my posts, because the only thing I use is the story feature.
Okay.
To quickly, give some updates and share some little clips. And we recently heard the new direction Instagram is going for. So photographers are not the heart of Instagram, the main target audience. That's how it is. So I'm pro having your own website, but I also know that having your own website doesn't mean that people will see your work. I encourage people to try YouTube. That helped me a lot. YouTube was never planned. I just did it to see how it goes. And then all my followers on Instagram, they come from YouTube. No question about it. So if you are after like followers and likes, or if you're just after showing your photos to other people, YouTube is actually maybe even better than Instagram, I would say.
Okay.
Because you can directly target people through searchable tags or titles. and you can include your work in a gear review and use your work as to showcase how the camera takes photos, what kind of photos. So you can show your work on YouTube, and I do that as well. And but there are other downsides, on YouTube. If you do that for a long time, you become a YouTube photographer, and then people judge you on the photos you show during a YouTube video, which, if you took these photos for the video, are probably not your best photographs. So if your work is the most important thing, then stay off of social media. But if you want to, pursue a life of photography, maybe even make a living as a photographer, there is no way around being on social media. Even if you do client work locally, you can totally make a living just having a website or physical portfolio and building a customer base or client base in your town. But it would be pretty stupid to not have at least a website or be on some social media page if you want to be discovered.
Yeah,
it just is this is how it is.
So with the website and building your portfolio on your website, do you have any tips on how to present a portfolio? Should you have like a dedicated style you present, or should you present just your best shots, or show some range of styles you can do?
So on your website, typically if it's a portfolio website, you only want to show the absolute best photographs that describe the type of work you're doing and want to do also in the future, because of course future clients, they will hire you for what they saw you're doing. And if you post different work that you don't want to do, then you get hired for that type of work, of course. If it's for a street photographer, then just show your best work. I mean, you can, in the beginning I had like city pages, so I would just show photos of different cities because I was traveling a lot. But honestly, don't look at my website as a good example, because I used to have a very professional video production oriented, but also photography, including website with all my references, all the logos of my clients, really professional and a show reel. But nowadays, because I don't need to do this work anymore, because I'm mostly doing my own stuff on YouTube or for Ricoh sometimes, my website is more like a landing page, and I have some photos on it, but honestly, I think I need to work on my portfolio and put out at least a small portfolio on my website. But right now it's too many photos. So I would say limit your photos to, for the front page, I would not post more than 10 maybe. And that should be enough. And then if you have projects, you can do project pages. But
because you said in one of the podcasts, about that's a long time ago, that you treat your Instagram as a portfolio. So that has changed?
I don't even remember saying that. That's horrible. No, I think I said it in the context of when you get approached on the street, then you can always show your Instagram.
Okay.
And people get what you're about immediately. So in that case, it is kind of important to look at the first 6 photos of your Instagram page, because that is what people see. But I saw Instagram more like a diary or something that shows your progress. Because when you can still go back to my not first photographs, but very early street photography work, which looks different than my work now. And I like to leave it there just to see, this is how I changed. But as a portfolio, it's a shame that it's so small,
Yeah.
Yeah. So I would say I think your photographs deserve a proper website, and maybe use Instagram to show more new stuff. But you can also, repost your classics, your best offs. Some people do that, and then your Instagram always looks like a portfolio, and it does work very well for some people.
In my case, I would be reposting like 2 photographs all over again, so that wouldn't really work. I wanted to ask you, you are a full-time freelancer since 2012, right? And
yeah.
I believe photography is a big part of that, but what else you also do or did to get to this point?
Okay, finally we are coming to my Genesis story. So, I as I said, I wanted to become a photojournalist, but I was I was studying communications designs or graphic design, and I had I applied for that with a photography portfolio, but I really became interested in like documentary photography because one of my teachers at that time was, and I think he still is, a photojournalist, and he was always shooting very wide, and for me this was a new world. And then I watched the film Wall Photographer with James Nachtwey, and that inspired me so much. I shot wide-angled, and I started doing my own reportage projects. But as a career choice, I wasn't sure if this is the right path, but I thought I just have to try it out. I wasn't really looking forward to become like a conflict photographer. I knew that this is not my thing, but I wanted to capture stories and document things in the world. So, and my photography teacher at that time, he encouraged me. He said, if you really want to do it, then I can definitely recommend it. Like, I've been freelancing my whole life, and it's the best thing I ever did. And he was really selling it to me, but not only to me, but also to other students. And for us students, it was always you either go to an advertising agency or you become a freelancer. And I actually got offered an internship from a very big advertising agency. But I knew the advertising world is not for me. I really don't like doing stuff that is just, how can I say it politely, very unimportant to the world.
Okay.
Who cares about a shampoo brand, or I don't want to be a designer for things that McDonald's or something. And this would have been my future if I accepted that. So I was like, okay, let's just become a photojournalist. I had no prior experience, so that was stupid. But my photographer teacher, he actually helped me getting signed by a photo agency, which is called Visum Images or Visum Photo. And it used to be the Magnum of Germany. It was a very big agency, very renowned, and he was part of it. But when I entered the agency to apply for it and show them my work, it was only like 3 guys in a small room. They only had one small room as an office, and they used to be the agency for photojournalism. And they accepted me. I was part of their system now. And the first thing I should have done and also tried is to just go out and capture all these, events going on in my city. I don't know. So like a horse race or something like that for magazines or newspapers. But even at that time, there were already things like what's it called? All these photo subscription sites.
Like stock images?
Stock images, yeah. So I never sold a single image. And even though I uploaded my photos right away after the event, but I was just 24 years old. I didn't have a car at that time. So I was always the last to upload my photos.
Okay.
And all the other photojournalists, they had backpacks with, transmitters and stuff to shoot the photo and then go straight to the agency or newspaper. So how can I compete with that, And I had my little Pentax camera because I couldn't afford a Canon. So that was, not doing it for me. And then I thought maybe I should find interesting stories and sell it to magazines. And I was so close to, there's a magazine called Geo in Germany. I think it's part of National Geographic, but a sub company. And I was in contact with them, and I worked on a project. And they said, if you're done, then you can present it to us. And I was like, oh, I'm so excited. And then it was just unrealistic. And the thing is also that in order to become a successful photojournalist nowadays, you have to have a lot of money, and then you have to finance your own trips and projects. You have to finish your projects. Ideally, you also write articles about your project. And then as a package, you sell it to a magazine or a newspaper. Or you do an exhibition. But I didn't have any money. I was also like part-time working in a coffee shop. Such a cliche after graduating as a graphic designer to work in a coffee shop. So it just didn't work out. But not to go too more into detail, but so that was my first steps into freelancing. My photographer teacher was still like helping me out, about how to get a press pass and stuff and insurance. And but I realized that the money is more in video production.
Okay.
And actually my photographer teacher asked me to assist him taking like headshots, corporate headshots, and then he had to shoot interviews, video, and he knew that I was a little bit I was doing some video work as well, so he asked me to assist and help him doing these interviews. And then I realized, I'm much better at doing these corporate video jobs than going out and become the next James Nachtwey without any money. So this is how I went into video production and started out just by myself, had some other friends freelancing with me together. My friend Bellow, he asked me to join his company. He started a little production company. I started a production company with my father. This also didn't work well. Then I went back to freelance, and then YouTube happened, and I don't need to do that shit anymore. No, I actually want to go back to doing more freelance work because it's not. I don't know how sustainable it is to just be on YouTube, because I don't trust the US dollar, and that is my main income. I need to look for plan B.
Okay. So as a freelancer, what are your income streams? I mean, you don't have to tell me like the exact numbers, but maybe for people who are maybe thinking to make the same jump as you did into freelancing and especially photography, how big of a part is, for example, YouTube ad revenue, memberships, prints, workshops?
Yeah. So number one advice, marry someone who has a stable job. No, this seriously is an important part. But
is it what you did?
Yeah, this is what I did, and it definitely helped. But so yeah, as a freelancer, it's always good to have multiple income streams. I always knew that, but I had no idea, how do you get passive income or, and I really want to make it clear here for anyone wondering, because I think I don't talk about it enough. I'm definitely not living an above average life because I'm on YouTube. I can tell you, I just make a living. I also have debt as anyone else, especially because I got a mortgage for this house, and I have a child now. But for me, it's more important for me to, if I can meet my basic needs, then that is my goal. Like, I don't need to become rich. I don't want to become. I don't even want to have influence because of my status or something. It's something that for YouTube, for example, just happens if you grow. But if I can just do what I want and pay for my basic needs, then that was my goal. And it's if you asked me 3 or 4 years ago, I would still be like, oh, I don't think I can ever get to that point. And I know I'm a realist. I know that even though I'm doing okay right now, it can all go away in a few months. I actually don't even have enough savings to survive more than 3 months, to be honest. But this is just how I live. It's stupid, at the same time, it's also the way to do it. Because if you always think about, I need something to fall back on, I need to plan B, I need to have this job first, and then work on my other, my main work or my art. Then it will maybe someday in your 50s or 60s work out, but then you're retired anyways. You can afford it. And all my friends from university who also played with the idea to become freelance, not a lot of them went freelance. Most of them accepted whatever offer they got from an agency. Then they were just hired, and they're still in the agency or another agency, but they are not really fulfilled or happy where they are, like the ones that I talk to, at least. Because it makes you good money, but you're always doing work that, especially if you're not the main designer of a team, or if you're just doing repetitive work because you have the skills, but it's not really a lot of yourself in it. I think it's hard to have a passion for something that you do for others. That's why companies probably invest so much in team building and getting workers to be motivated. But for me, I just could never imagine sitting all day in an office. And I used to do this because I was sometimes hired as a freelancer for a month in the office. So I had to come every day like a regular worker. So I know how it feels like, and I was always so happy to leave after that. All the drama between other co-workers and all these stupid things. I had really rough times, not being able to buy food for a week, just eating rice and whatever I can scrap together. But at the end, this was the only way for me, and it just happened to work out on YouTube. Let me go back to your original question about what are the types of incomes streams. So I'm not getting paid from clients anymore because I don't do any work outside of my channel. Or if you're following what Ricoh is doing, I sometimes do videos for them as well. If they ask you to do something like a video production or something that involves a lot of work, they better pay you. Otherwise, they are taking advantage of you. So Ricoh obviously pays me for my labor and, you know, doing videos for them. I get a little bit of, I work sometimes for Ricoh, so they pay me sometimes. No, they always pay me if they hire me, but it's not like regular stable income. Then of course YouTube, you have YouTube like advertising money, like AdSense, and that pays for my rent, which is nice. Once you reach, you know, that level that, you know, your videos you already produced create, you know, enough income so that you can pay your rent and all the things you need to pay, like electricity and stuff. Then everything else you can save or, you know, use to invest in yourself again. So YouTube actually pays enough so that I can pay my rent, but not much more than that. And then I also have some Amazon affiliate links under my videos. But to be honest, I can tell you I make maybe €100 a month from that. I used to make like 300 or 400 a month from my Amazon links. But I think I'm not really doing enough to push these links. But I don't want to do always like product reviews. So that's that. I also sometimes do, people also sometimes ask me for like advice. So I offer like Skype or Zoom sessions, like consulting sessions, portfolio feedback, or someone, you know, who wants to make a book, they want to maybe some feedback, or so that happens sometimes. I sell some prints, not a lot, but these are like small things that happen on the side. And yeah, but to be honest, it's mostly, I also sell presets.
Yeah.
But they're not, you know, presets are a big business. Like there's no wonder so many photographers push their presets, because it is crazy how many people buy presets. When I made my presets, I made them because I wanted to create the look of my GR on my Fuji camera. And I knew there was no preset out there that does it. I came close to it, to the look I want, but it's not the same as the original look I was going for. But anyways, the presets, when I put them out, like money came like crazy. It's people underestimate how much money people make with presets. Like whenever you see a big YouTuber plugging the presets, you know they're making some serious cash after this for a few months.
Okay.
Or they have been previously. So maybe I should do more presets, but that is something that is still, like, I don't know how long ago, 2 years ago maybe, I published them. I can't say how much, but maybe like 300, 400 euro or so in a month. But it used to be, you know, more and more. But yeah, if you ever wonder why people sell presets, it's because people buy them, you know.
Okay.
So yeah, a lot of different things, but yeah, at the moment it's mostly what I get from YouTube and these little consulting sessions and the jobs I do for Ricoh. And sponsorships. I totally forgot sponsorships, but I haven't been doing them for a long time. If I would do a sponsor, I don't know, you did probably also Skillshare? Did you do Skillshare before?
No, I'm not that skilled to do Skillshare.
Okay. So Squarespace also approached me, but I just can't do Squarespace. I can't put my viewers through
with your beautiful website.
Yeah. Make your next move with Squarespace. Squarespace, man. I used to own Squarespace websites, but not anymore. So I'm not the right guy to make advertising for them. But sponsorships are a big deal. And if you want to make money on YouTube, you need to, at some point, you need to have sponsors. Or you are Mr. Beast or someone, you know, who has a million views. So sorry.
I know you also had Patreon, but recently switched to memberships, right? So what are the benefits of each platform, and why did you make the switch? Is it just easier to organize everything on one platform?
Definitely. I totally forgot about that. Yeah, but memberships is so for everyone who doesn't know this, on YouTube, some channels, they offer like the viewer to become a member. So you can subscribe to a channel, but you can also become a member. And then you can post exclusive content just for these members. And you can set how much you want to charge for this membership. And I think for me, I charge like $4.99. And the reason I did that is because on Patreon, in the beginning, I think Patreon is great for like small creators or small artists that have a small and passionate core fan group that want to support you because they know you don't have a lot of resources to grow. And at the beginning, I had a lot of supporters, and it was great, and very thankful for that, of course. But the issue is, the more and more my channel grew, the better videos I wanted to do, the more I spent time to work on multiple videos at the same time and become a little bit more professional about it. I had less and less time to offer my patrons all these perks that I promised them.
Okay.
And then from time to time, patrons would drop off, go somewhere else, leave, which is totally fine. But it's just going to Patreon, you have to create an account, you have to be logged in or log in to it to see what someone is writing to you. But because they are like paying supporters, you want to focus your attention to them first before you go to the public comments on YouTube, for example. And I just couldn't really do that. And I didn't want them to, charge money for some things that I promised and I cannot fulfill. So I decided to go and do it on YouTube because I'm already on YouTube every day, checking what's going on. And whenever I uploaded like Patreon content, I uploaded it on my YouTube channel, unlisted, and then posted it on Patreon, which is, just a step that takes more time. So now on YouTube, I can just upload a video, make it for members only, and then write a little community post about it, and then all my members can see it. And I actually do at least one video every month for my members, so I can actually fulfill my promises. And it's a lot of fun. I really, the thing is, the more you grow on something like a YouTube channel, the higher the expectations are from you, and it's harder to experiment. Like, you do one thing wrong and suddenly everyone is like, oh, what's going on with this channel? I'm leaving. So in the beginning of a YouTube channel, this is so great. If you have like 10,000 followers on that range, you still can experiment and see what you can try things out. But for me right now, it's just a little harder. So yeah. I have to do more things that work, but at the same time, I want to be me. But for my members, I couldn't care less how I'm dressed. I because it's not public. It's just for my 150 or how many members I have.
I saw your update from the forest.
Oh, are you a member?
Yeah, so I bought it.
Okay.
So I can watch the streams and to find the information.
Nice.
For the interview.
Thanks, man. Also for outtakes. Sometimes I edit a video and it's over 1 hour long, and I'm like, this is too long, and then I have to cut stuff out. But it always hurts to cut stuff out because I know that my core fan group, they would appreciate seeing that. But I have to, be more considerate, because if YouTube is my business now, I can't just, risk having suddenly I always have to look out for the channel's growth. and YouTube does some things that I don't really like, but I have to do. For example, a video that is coming out today after this talk is just a behind-the-scenes vlog of my friends and I having fun. But who cares about it if you don't know me, right? So I titled it, why I love the Fujifilm X-E4 for video.
Okay.
But it is just a big sample video or showcase of how this camera does vlogging. So I have to sometimes do that to reach new people, and that's just how it is. So for my members, I do whatever I want, and that's so much fun. So yeah.
Talking about your YouTube channel, there is a rumor floating around which I would like to address first.
I have rumors around me.
And then it is, are you going to change the name of the channel to Samuel's Farmlife?
Oh, yeah. Probably not, but it is very tempting to open a new channel just to, explore farm life. I'm not sure. And I can't really answer that question because I don't really know how the future of my channel is going to look like. Because of my son now being born, I'm not able to do as many videos. I cannot travel right now. And I know the stuff that works well on my channel, the longer format videos where I interview other photographers. I want to go back to that, but I need to make time for it. I need to travel for it. So, yeah. I actually, after seeing your Eric Kim episode, that was actually very fun hearing him talk.
Thank you.
I always wanted to know what's going on with this guy, because he was a huge inspiration for starting my channel. I always watched his GoPro vlogs, meeting other street talks. So a lot of what I do is actually kind of copying what he did, maybe with better quality now. But what I really loved about him is that he was never chasing views or stuff. He was always sharing random stuff, and that's what I did with my potato vlogs that I do on my channel, or is sharing this, what's happening around me, meeting other people, and I think this is something for someone who wants to grow on YouTube or some platform. It always comes down to you as an individual, you as the character. The photographers I follow, they are interesting characters, and they have other passions outside of photography. And I want to do a video about it someday, but I think I can't always just talk about photography. I have to sometimes show, look, I have a small chicken farm now, and this is my boring village where I live, but life changes, and I want to share this somehow, but maybe the name Streetlife is not fitting that much anymore. I don't know if you noticed, but I removed the L in between.
Yeah. I was actually checking, and then you did that on purpose? You wanted to make it more searchable, or?
No, just because people started referring to my channel as Samuel Streetlife anyways. So the L was just because of my Japanese name. But it's shorter is better.
Okay.
Usually.
So you feel like the YouTube algorithm influences what you create?
Unfortunately,
you also do a lot of gear reviews, right? Which I don't expect them all to be just, because you love all the cameras. Or, there are channels who do only gear reviews, right? Which might be a way to go if you want to, break out on YouTube.
Yeah, I generally only review things that I personally already use or want to use and want to see if it can help me.
Okay.
So when I review products or camera gear that was sent to me, then I think beforehand if I can use this for myself. Like, but I'm not really included a lot. When a camera comes out, I'm not really on the list of people the company reach out to. I mean, Fujifilm did something with the X-T4 with me last year, or was it this year? No, I don't remember. I think it was this year. That was the first time I was like included in the brand new camera release, but I accepted it because I was actually looking to buy a small camera for my videos, and I felt this camera can become my new YouTube video camera, and it has become the main camera I use now. So that's, as long as I review stuff that I personally am interested in and want to know more about, then I will continue doing that. But I will probably not become a review channel. There's too much work.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is there something like a best camera for street photography?
Is there something like a best camera for street photography?
If you should pick one camera.
Why are you asking me?
Because it will be a good title.
Yeah. Oh yeah, good clickbait title. Samuel Streetlife's opinion on best street photography camera.
Revealing what a surprising street photography camera, something like that.
Yeah. Okay.
So why is Ricoh GR best street photography camera? Should be the question.
What, say again?
So maybe rather, why is Ricoh GR IV the best street photography camera? Should be the question.
How many times do I have to repeat myself? If I haven't sold the GR3 to you yet, then I did.
Well, actually, I bought it after I watched your video with Sean Tucker and you in London.
Ah, okay.
So I thought, like, I really need this.
You definitely do. Everyone needs a GR. Yeah. So in my opinion, it really is the best street photography camera. And I'm not saying this because
you are paid.
Huh?
Because you are
paid.
No.
I'm not. Let's make this clear. I'm not being paid to use this camera. I started street photography with the GR1, which was also provided to me by Ricoh, but I have been a Ricoh ambassador even before that. So with my Pentax DSLR time, so I did work for them until the GR came out. And then they were like, here, do you want to try this? Do you want to become an ambassador with this camera? And I was like, actually, I wanted to try out one for a long time. And then it became my favorite camera. I traveled all my 20s. I traveled with my GR, captured some things I can never show in daylight. I always say it's hard to replace. It's easy to replace, an X-T2 or X Pro so-and-so or Canon so-and-so, but it's hard to replace, a small compact camera, because any other small compact camera for photography, from what I've seen and testing, cannot come close to the GR.
Where is the balance between having too much of gear on one hand, and on the other hand, just one camera, one lens? Like, do you keep all the gear you use? I mean, for your work, for your personal work, not for your YouTube. I expect you have more gear for like lighting and such.
So because when I started, I never had enough money to buy everything I felt I needed. So I always had to buy what was really necessary. Like, first, I got a camera that shoots video, but I didn't have the most versatile lens. It had no autofocus. I had no microphone. So next I had to buy microphones. So my gear actually slowly accumulated, and I only have like one LED light that I use sometimes. I could probably afford another one, but I try to always have gear that I actually use. It's hard sometimes to find a good balance. Like, you know, what do I want to say? So basically, all the cameras I have at the moment, they are being used. But if I don't use a camera like for 3 or 4 weeks, I feel the urge to sell it, because if I don't use a camera, I always feel bad about it. So that's why I have no issues like switching out my main camera. Like, yeah, the GR is my main like street camera, but you know, I used to own a 5D that I used for, you know, more professional work. Then I felt I don't need it anymore, so I sold it. I owned the Leica M262, the Leica SL, but I don't get too attached to my gear. Like, the moment I feel like, oh, it's not for me, then I rather sell it than keep it, because I feel like if I don't like it, it has to go. And so everything I own at the moment, I still use. I actually am still thinking about changing all my gear. I'm actually thinking of ditching my Fuji gear for Canon gear, but it never ends, you know. I think about gear, but for my personal work, I pretty much know what I want to use. And that is this camera, and what I want to use above that is, at the moment, I'm experimenting, let's say.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you talked about being a Ricoh GR ambassador. Can you tell me more about it? How does it work? Do you have any restrictions? Like, are you free to say what you want in the reviews? For example, like if you don't like it, or if you can use other brands on your channel and stuff?
Yeah, so before I talk about the situation for me, because I think it's different from other ambassadors, because traditionally, let's say you have an Olympus ambassador or a Sony or a Leica, the brand often wants the photographer to only use their gear.
Yeah.
But in the case of Ricoh, I mean, they also have Pentax. Pentax and Ricoh is one company. I don't care about Pentax anymore, but they make this camera as, this is a pocket camera for like documenting your life, for doing snapshots. It's a snapshot camera. They cannot expect me to only use this as a photographer.
Okay.
So they know this is a camera for a photographer who already has cameras, and they want something small, so they don't have to bring their heavy cameras. So from the beginning, I knew it's not a problem that I use different gear. And actually, I cannot take credit for it. Shout out to Wolfgang Baust from Germany. He's the product manager for Ricoh Germany. And to give you a little backstory, so when the GR3 was announced, so every country has to have their own ambassadors, or usually a brand wants to have their local ambassadors, so that people, like in Germany, they come in contact to me, or Oliver Krumis is another GR ambassador. So they always look for people that represent their camera. And then when the GR3 was announced, of course, because I was already an ambassador here in Germany, Wolfgang, the Ricoh product manager in Germany, suggested me to Japan, where Japan is where Ricoh comes from. And then I don't know what they said, but something like, oh, everyone but not this guy. And you know why? Because at that time I was still using my X100F, which is the camera I used to build my channel. But I only had this camera because my GR broke, and I needed a new street camera. And Ricoh didn't bring out any new cameras, so I was like, I guess I buy a different camera then. But then I guess they realized there aren't any other options or better options, so they still gave me the camera. But at the end, I think our pitch was that, isn't it better that someone is, nut and brand whore? I don't want to say whore. I don't know if I can say that. Like SLUT to the brand, No, it's...
Yeah, okay.
You know what I mean? Is if you see a brand ambassador and all the talk is, let's say, Fuji, do you think they are always talking their real honest thoughts? Maybe not, right? Because you never see them talking about other gear, or maybe you don't even hear them talking negatively about the brand. And I always wanted to keep my authenticity, and I felt like until this GR III came out, I think people valued my opinion because I was not really too much kissing other brands' ass. So I didn't want to do this with the GR either. And I told Ricoh, let's make this a strong point, like, a benefit of me using other cameras, showing that this is not, the only camera. This is, my pocket camera. And this also at the first video I did, the first impression, I pointed out like a bug that I found, like snap focus. It didn't really work in the first version of the firmware. And I was, annoyed by that. I said that. And then Ricoh Japan didn't even know that until they saw my video. And then they fixed it. And then they said, it's actually good that I talk honestly about the camera. So they are super cool. And I guess that was the question.
Yeah, and you said they are not paying you to do that. So I guess they providing the gear?
Yeah. Okay. Maybe, I don't know, this might be interesting for your viewers, but so they don't pay me to be an ambassador, but no other camera brand pays a photographer to be an ambassador. Maybe if it's, I don't know, Steve McCurry, then yeah, Leica pays maybe Steve McCurry to show up in a Leica SL ad. Who knows? We never see him working with the SL, but suddenly he has an SL. No, but camera companies, so before, like Instagram or social media, they always had photographers on their website, professional photographers, that were doing real professional work with the cameras they want to sell or the brand, as ambassadors. And this is how it always was. And no one cared about people who have large followings. And of course, they were always looking for that as well. But it was enough to have a professional photographer that has a good reputation on the website, listed as a photographer. I guess most people want to become an ambassador because they think it gives them some status, some status, some fame, or but I'm actually going to do a video about this topic because so many people ask me how to become an ambassador, and they all I don't think most people have the right intentions. And so the benefits for a photographer are that you can rent equipment, you can borrow equipment for a long time, for a project maybe. It's not even the case that a camera brand gives you a camera to keep. It rarely happens. Like, I don't think Leica is doing it. I don't think Sony is doing it. Fujifilm, from what I've heard from other ambassadors, Fujifilm ambassadors, they all have to pay for their cameras. I guess the GR is just cheaper than a system camera, so they can actually give it to their ambassadors to keep. So there's, one benefit. Is it worth it? Yeah, maybe. You don't need to buy a camera if you're using it for your main work. Of course, it's nice. The other benefit is that you have another way to share your work, because the brand takes your work and shares it on the website. Or maybe, for example, whenever Photokina was in Germany, they printed my photos big, and it's always exciting. I get to keep the prints afterwards.
Okay.
Yeah, it's cool. I recently threw away like a big print that I printed from a Pentax 645Z file, but I had to throw it away because I had no space when I was moving. And it's a photo of my brother, like a skateboard photo. But actually, it was a very nice print, and it's so stupid. Now I regret it because it's very expensive buying a nice print. Yeah, anyways, but this is one thing. And then, of course, if you're a photographer who, wants to do workshops, it's always, good to have a reputation as someone who is worthy of teaching a workshop to you. So if you see professional photographer and you see their clients and their work, then this could be already enough. But if you see, oh, he's a Canon ambassador or Fujifilm, then I think it will be easier. And I know that Ricoh is doing workshops in Japan in their showrooms. So if I would live in Japan, I would do workshops in their showroom. And actually was about to do a workshop tour in Germany with Ricoh. So that is something you can do, a benefit of having a brand behind you. But you don't get paid to be an ambassador, and the brand only cares about the image of their product, right? So if you're an asshole photographer, I mean, if you are not a nice guy to be around or you have a bad reputation, they won't even want you to be an ambassador, right? I mean, this is obvious, but so much about how you communicate with other people in the public or within other photographers is very important. And so for everyone who's trying to become an ambassador, I always tell people, first of all, I ask them, why do you want to become an ambassador? And then usually the answer is because I want free stuff, or, because it's good to be an ambassador, right? But they don't think about the brand. Like, the brand doesn't care to show your work. They care to sell cameras. So they want to know if you, first of all, already love the camera enough so that you can sell it without overselling it by being fake about it.
Oh, okay.
Right. So a brand needs to know that you love the camera already, and you would do everything for them. So that is the most important thing if you want to become a brand ambassador, is that you already love the camera so much that you already use it for your photography. And best case, your work is already being shared and in your community, and is seen by other people, so they recognize the project or your photography. So in terms of in my situation, I just provided work they needed for Photokina and for like catalogs or ads whenever they needed pictures. But I didn't have a big following. I had 400 followers on Instagram at that time. And then I also started using Canon and stuff. So, but because of my YouTube channel, and this goes back to why I said that Ricoh Japan was first against me, because in the public I was known as a Fuji guy because no one knew about my Ricoh history, but technically I was still a Ricoh GR ambassador. But I always wanted to go back to the GR, so I had to convince Ricoh that I'm still crazy about the GR. So I was like, oh, I want to use it, give it to me, I want to test it. And then I fell in love with it again. And all these other projects you saw, GR project, this comes all from my idea. So how can we do interesting stuff with the GR? They, for example, asked me if I can visit some other GR ambassadors to interview them maybe. They had no idea of concept. And they said, if you have a good idea, then let us know, and maybe we can do something on your channel. And then I came up with this concept of traveling with the GR, because this is what I love to do with the GR. Traveling to new places, meeting other photographers. So I just did what I love to do with this camera. And so that's the most important thing, to love the camera first. And then you shouldn't even contact brands, because they get contacted by other photographers all the time. They only listen to other ambassadors. And usually there's one guy in the market team maybe, or another photographer who's involved, that is looking out for other, talents or photographers. But usually you just have to be a very open fan of a brand and have some success.
Okay.
That is enough. And then you should be someone who gets along with the brand's message. Yep.
Okay, thank you. I would also like to talk about Leica a little bit. I know you are probably admiring, but also make a fun of Leica, right?
You mean this?
And Leica is...
I showed too much.
And Leica is really often a camera company which seems to be quite polarizing on the internet, right? Why so many people hate Leica and have the need to write about it on the internet? I can only speak from my perspective, but I think Eric Kim said it very well in your last episode. It's so funny because it's so true. Anyone who gets into street photography, at one point in their street photography career, they have to try a Leica, because we associate, street photography and photojournalism with a Leica camera, especially the Leica M. So I always knew I have to try it at least once to see what the hype is all about. And I had a Leica film, Minolta film camera rangefinder, and then I already knew then what the experience is like with a rangefinder, and then I got more interested. But I bought a Leica SL first. I don't know why. Probably because it's the cheapest digital Leica you could buy at the time. But then I wasn't satisfied. I wanted to have the rangefinder experience. I bought the M262. And to be honest, it took me some time to adjust, but it's all about the experience of shooting a Leica. It's not so much about the results. People talk about the Leica look, but it's comes down to the lenses. There was
it's
actually
about
a question about that in the comments.
Yeah,
which we will which we are going to get soon. But the question was, Samuel, could you explain what exactly is Leica look? For me, it's very difficult to explain. Micro contrast, maybe color rendition. Thanks a lot. I think
it's all the three things you mentioned. I think that's part of it. People say, for example, they can pick out a photo that was shot on a Q when scrolling down the Instagram feed. They know, oh, this is like a Q photo. And I think some lenses have a specific look. I mean, if you use a Noctilux lens, people will probably know because of the crazy bokeh. But you should have asked this Thorsten Overgaard. But I think it's a combination of the lens quality being that they have very good micro contrast. Like my 28 Elmerit, it's a very small lens, but from all the lenses I owned in the past, it had the best contrast and the best micro contrast. And what the hell is even micro contrast, right? But it's just how, when you shoot through a lens, with this lens, the 28 Elmerit, it doesn't feel like you're shooting through a lens because you can't really feel the glass. It is so transparent, so clear, and that's I think the Leica look, and also the pop you get, the color pop or the contrast pop or the bokeh pop, how the autofocus area renders and all that stuff. Is it the most important thing? I don't know, but it's something people appreciate, and that's all I can say.
Okay.
To be honest, I think I think I'm starting to come out of my Leica phase. But that's a topic for another time. Because I still have some videos that I have to push out where
Mike is kind of something is.
Oh,
that's fine. It's fine.
Can you hear me?
It's fine now. Yeah.
Oh, it was. Yeah, I'm playing with my Leica here. So. Yeah, they are expensive, and they are not expensive for the right people. But to be real honest, if you don't care too much about the experience or the specific experience of using a rangefinder, then there are cameras that can probably do a better job. The technology isn't that crazy. It's actually below the other camera brands. But it's all about the lenses, and the lenses are nice. Yeah. And no one makes rangefinders anymore. So there isn't even, they are the only ones in their own market.
That might actually be it. When you need something specific, you need a rangefinder with a full frame, with a, manual everything without any other features.
Yeah, I will say though, when I used to own the rangefinder, the Leica M, it is great if you if you are like prepared for the shot, but often enough it was distracting me getting a quick shot, because when I'm on the street, I don't want to always have my camera ready, like close to my eye. It's not that convenient, because sometimes I do other things, and even the fact that you have to always pre-focus. In where I live, the weather isn't great, so it's not always sunny. So I have to really get down the focus guessing, the distance guessing, and I got really good at it. So probably I could just master it. But it's just annoying, sitting somewhere and then at 2.8 or f2, guessing the distance to a subject, taking a photo blindly, and then looking at the screen and you're like, oh, I didn't get it. But on the GR, I do this, I take a photo, done. And even when I'm on my bike, I can take photos one-handed. On the bike, I can pre-focus with one hand. I can pre-focus my lens on the M camera and then lift it up, take a photo. But what if suddenly something is in front of me and then I have to adjust again? And
it comes down to what you said. It's maybe more about experience.
Yeah, and it is a tool that it feels like it's such a cliche, but it does feel like an instrument. You are playing everything, and it is very satisfying when you get the shot. And I got some good photos or photos that I like, and it's a lot of fun. But I feel like Leica should develop something new. I think what they did with the Q, for example, of course it's so popular because it has autofocus now. So you can have that Leica look, but with autofocus. And then I think they should keep the M system for the fans and the heritage and all of that, but maybe develop a more modern camera, maybe in a rangefinder style, maybe hybrid, because I don't think, I doubt that Gary Winogrand or Bresson, they wouldn't use a GR if they could, I don't think they would use an M nowadays, maybe because this is what they're used to, but if you can get the shot quicker and with a smaller camera, then if it's, if you're about the results, then there are other options.
What do you think about people covering the red dot? Isn't it a bit little hypocritical? You just buy this camera and then you just slap a...
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It doesn't really matter to me what other people do, but I usually do cover the logo of a camera brand because I just don't like how it looks. Even on my Canon or my Fuji, I always tape the logo. And with Leica, you not only have a white text, but you also have a red dot. And I think it's just too much. Like,
but isn't it why people buy it?
This is how you do it. Like a very tiny, the model name, and then this is where you see the brand on the corner here.
Yeah, but I think it's the part of the brand, like
but
being
no one
recognized.
needs to know using a Olympus or Canon. Who cares? But with Leica, yeah, I know some people want to know. I want others to know what camera they're using. But and I also don't like how the red dot is in the middle of the M camera. Like, if the Q is on the side, it does look much better. So it's part of the design. But on the M, I always preferred the M without the red dot.
Okay. So there were more questions. I will just pick one which I found. Any word on the next GR model? Just wondering if and when there will be another option. And there were also a question, should I get GR3 or wait for GR4?
I was hoping that these questions will not come up during this session. Even if I knew it, I wouldn't be allowed to tell you anything. But honestly, really honestly, I don't know.
What are your ethics when doing street photography, Samuel?
Yeah. So for me, for myself, in order for me to be comfortable on the street, I need to know why I'm doing it. And my mission on the street, or my personal mission, is to document the street. It's not to, I don't think about a photo that I don't hunt for specific images. I just want to document what's coming in front of my lens. And therefore, I always have an answer when someone asks me, like, why are you doing this? I say, I want to capture and document the streets because maybe in 10 or 20 years, we want to remember how it was living in, Hamburg or Tokyo or somewhere. So I'm trying to capture the streets in more of a documentary point of view. Of course, I try to put myself in the image. I lean towards specific motifs. But yeah, my general rule is to not leave a negative experience for my subjects. So if I can be invisible, I will choose to be invisible. And my way of shooting is very discreet. If it's an event or a big public space, I can be a little bit more open about it. I'm never hiding my camera. I always have it around me on my hands. And I often, even with the GR, even though it has no viewfinder, I walk around the city like this all the time. or like this. No, that's not true. But more like, having it here because if I do this, then it looks a little sneaky.
Okay.
And this is also a little strange. Although I do this sometimes, but when I have the camera close, like I can look at the screen, it does look kind of like I'm checking photos or, looking at the phone. And I just like how it feels. It's almost like shooting with your eye because it's your point of view of your eye. And that's, so I don't hide my camera in public. I let everyone know who wants to know why I'm doing it. And that's pretty much it.
Are there subjects you don't take pictures of?
Only if I feel like it is going to make my subject very uncomfortable. For example, let's say it's a disabled person in a wheelchair, maybe having like a weird expression or something, but I still want to photograph that person because in the scene, it makes it an interesting scene. I might take a photo of the scene, but the moment I feel like I'm making it too much about this person, I try to avoid making someone uncomfortable. I rather ask them for a photo if I know. Sometimes I just feel it. It's always children, you know. I love photographing children, but sometimes you see the parents already being very protective, suspicious, and you just have to read the vibes, the atmosphere. Like if it's a children's playground, and you know, I was in Cologne recently, and there was a guy with blowing like water bubbles, and children were playing, and of course I can take photos of this scene because it's interesting for everyone. And I'm not making it really about like children or disabled people or homeless people. So if it's about the person, if it's becoming about that person, then why not just take a portrait or speak to that subject? Because I usually have people as part of a scene, not as the main subject. So I don't have that problem because everyone is just part of a big scene. So that's the only thing I try to avoid is making it about someone if I know I can potentially make their day worse.
Okay.
Because they think, oh, he's just taking a photo of me because I'm in a wheelchair, or because, I don't know, they start to think about things. So if I don't say anything, I'm just assuming, but usually my gut feeling is right. So I trust my gut, and I'm more of an observer and street scene photographer, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I saved my last question for the end, I guess. So what is the hardest part of taking care of chickens?
That is your last question?
Yeah.
The hardest part is getting used to waking up early enough to let them out of their cages.
But you did make automation, right?
I bought
machine.
I bought this here. This is something you need. It is something that opens your door automatically. You can set a timer. It has a light sensor.
So will you add an affiliate link for that in your on your YouTube channel?
I think the one that I showed you is only being sold in Germany. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm a beginner. I'm just learning how to raise.
And how do you get them back? Like, I can imagine in the morning you just open it and they run outside. But how do you get them back for the night?
They just go back.
They just go back?
Yeah.
That's really simple.
You just wait for them to go back, and then you close the door.
Okay, that's not that hard.
It's pretty easy, yeah.
And do you buy like a special, like a feeding, like a, something to feed them?
No, I just, everything I use I got from the previous owner of the house and the chickens. It's a very simple, like a pot where you put the grains and stuff. And I feed them sometimes during the day. It's more to give them like a treat, like dried, like worms.
Okay.
And this is like a snack for them.
And can you pet them?
What?
Like, can you pet them? Can you?
Yeah. Yeah, you can do that. They're still a little scared. I don't think they really love me. They like me. But the smaller chickens, they know that I'm giving them food, so they come to me and they often jump to your hand as well. And they give us great eggs.
Okay.
Eggs that have a lot of egg yolk and less egg white. Okay. So more of the stuff I like about eggs. And we never have to buy eggs. We always have enough eggs now. So.
That's cool. You should really watch the movie The Chicken People. You will love that.
Yeah. They will probably show up in my future videos as test subjects.
Yeah, but I saw some photographs and it looks really like the black and white. It looks really artistic, right?
Yeah, it's nice.
Thank you once again for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, make sure to subscribe wherever you're listening to it. You can find this podcast live on YouTube, where you can ask questions in the real time, or find us in your favorite podcast application. Make sure you're subscribed if you want to be notified when I post a new episode. In case you would like to listen to shorter episodes more frequently, there is a new podcast called Best of About Photography, and it is updated daily with highlights from the interviews. Come back next week because I will be talking with another interesting guest about photography. I'm very happy you are tuning in for another episode of Podcast About Photography. Until next time.